Welcome to Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, the founder and CEO of Enter the Arena. I'm a serial entrepreneur and an expert in raising investment and business growth. Our mission at Enter the Arena is to empower female founders to fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business with investment expertise and business coaching. Here we share the stories of inspirational female founders who've raised investment to inspire you to do the same. You'll hear their honest accounts of what it was really like to secure funding, the highs, the lows, and the challenges they experienced on the journey. And along the way, we'll discuss top tips for how you can be successful too. Today I'm speaking with Linda Wade, the co-founder and CEO of Spinview. Now, Spinview is a virtual reality platform that simplifies the way that organisations can access, understand and communicate information about the world around them. What they do is use powerful digital twin technology to capture the data from the physical world and allow organisations to get business intelligence insights through immersive technology. It is complicated, but don't worry, I'm going to ask Linda to explain it all shortly. I'm sure she'll do a much better job than I will. Now, prior to setting up Spinview, Linda spent over 10 years in senior business development and partnership roles for major organisations, including Microsoft, Outbrain, and in the media industry. She's an absolute powerhouse when it comes to strategic vision and deal making, and I've had the pleasure of working with Linda for a number of years now. She's a champion of flexible working and is driving for equality and more female leadership roles in virtual reality technology. And Linda has raised a total of 7.5 million in funding since she founded the company in 2015. So let's meet Linda and find out more about her entrepreneurial and fundraising journey. So hi, Linda, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks, Julia. How are you?
Great to see you. I'm very, very well. So, okay, before we go any further, Linda, please tell us what a digital twin is and why this is so useful for organisations.
Yeah, so a digital twin is you take something that exists in the real world and you can make it digital. So if you take something that, for example, like with Amazon, when they started, they took a book and they digitized it. It was almost a twin, a direct copy of the physical asset, and it's now on a computer screen so that you can access it from anywhere on any device that you want to access it through. The area that Spinview works in is buildings and infrastructure. Now, that's quite difficult because they're sort of changing all the time, you know, with weather, with degradation, with people's usage. So those environments, those buildings, not only have a physical structure, but they're being operated as well. And they actually almost become a living, breathing entity. So we take direct copies of the physical structure, so measurement accurate images, and recreate models on a computer screen to allow you to be able to see what the building looks like, and then tie in all the live feeds of information about what's happening in the space so that you can see it from anywhere that you want to be able to do with it. But the key difference that we do is it's all right having all of this information, and yeah, it can be quite complicated. And actually, at the moment, that's the point. It sits with technicians, engineers, mathematicians, and people that really understand numbers or engineering. And our view was, well, what about the other 80% of people inside a business that know they need some information about their space they're working in or the space they're working on? And how do we get that into their hands? So we call this essence of transforming all that complex data into something that is simple and usable by any employee, vision intelligence, because you can understand vast amounts of information when you can see it through an image instead of the written word or instead of a form of numbers. And we're born with the ability to have spatial awareness. And so if we can combine all this really complex stuff over here and just display it as an image on your screen that just happens to contain all the information you might need, you can start to understand all the mathematical and engineering data really simply, as simple as red or green.
Wow, that is, I understand it, which is amazing because it is complex, but that's so brilliant. How did you come up with this idea for Spinview? Where did it all start?
Oh, well, actually, a lot of that is actually to do with my co-founder. We met when I was back at Microsoft. He's a specialist with an image-based background, and I'm sort of more of commercial tech solutions. And we were looking at what Google Street View enabled people to do. All of a sudden, you could go to communicate a place and tell people where to go, and you could see it and understand where you were going before you got there. So this is like Google Street View on steroids. It allows you the same kind of thing, but with all the levels of information and the full information about the space. And it's moved from there. When we launched the service, it very much started in 2D images, so very flat-based images, but allowed you to put on information for maybe to sell something or to change the way it looked, so you could see which version people preferred of a building before you built it. And there's lots you can do with a digital image to kind of test things and play with things before you have to actually spend money in the real world. And so we just started there and moved through this space. And now the system allows you to go into measurement space and environmental emissions and health and structure and the way that we integrate and move through spaces. So it's got lots of layers of information now that you can go, not just this 2D. And it's just something that's grown through time. And, you know, we're hoping that we can make it so that every building has data that's accessible for any employee that wants to do it.
So all of that tech and kind of building that solution and figuring it all out, I mean, I'm imagining that needed quite a bit of funding at the beginning to build it. Is that right?
Well, yeah, it's needed a lot. And I probably, to be in fairness, haven't actually raised enough in any of the rounds that I've actually done. We have cash flowed most of the business sort of at all stages along, and we've taken on paying clients. And actually, a lot of the system has been built with their input as sort of beta clients and, you know, strategic partnerships. But yes, we had sort of friends and family round. I put in an initial investment of, you know, our family's savings. We brought in friends and family, and that sort of kicked us off and got a few customers in. We made some learnings, and then we did a slightly bigger angel round. And then now we've just done this much larger round, which also includes sort of a little bit of money where we got some convertible loan notes just at the onset of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. So you're still sort of, I mean, not pre-launch, but still in the really early stages of this, and a business that requires like this huge chunks of money. And I know your last round was a big one, wasn't it? 5.5 million.
Yes.
What are the challenges around that when you are going out for investment for a business that, you know, isn't generating a huge amount of revenue, is still sort of building? You know, what are the kind of friction points you come up with in your discussions with investors?
Yeah, so actually, it's been really, really interesting. In the earlier days, we just didn't have either enough traction or enough customers or letters of intent or expressions of interest to prove that what we were doing works. Even though we were working with some customers on it, we just didn't present it in the right way. And we took a lot of those learnings that didn't allow us maybe to get as much money earlier on as we could have done. So we didn't move as quickly as maybe we could have done if we had done that correctly. And in this round, I sought out a lot of expressions of interest from companies to say, well, when you've got this, we want to buy it. So I'd got a partnership opportunity with TfL, and I have 3 expressions of interest for the same service. So that once, so TfL coming on as an R&D partner to help us develop something which will help them. And then the aim being that once that's finished, they will have it. And then these expressions of interest will also have it. And we're doing the same in buildings, and we've got the same in road. So it's a way of not just capturing that data and creating that twin, but making it so that anybody can do it, and you don't need to be the engineer to do it. And having those expressions of interest completely transformed the way the rounds went, and having the customers showing that interest and signing up for things, even if it's for pilots, has just transformed the way that the trust that people have got within us. And it allowed the high net worth family offices that we've been dealing with and the angels from this last round to really have confidence that we are actually going to be going somewhere, that this is actually the right route and it is different, and here you go. So we didn't necessarily have the contract signed, but we do have the interest signed, and therefore it actually changed the way that people viewed us, and we were a more certain bet. Yeah,
that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because that everybody wants to see proof of product to market fit.
They do.
Traction. What they really want is contracts, money in the bank, but it's not always possible. So that kind of letter of intent is the next best thing, I guess. And these are big reputable organizations you're dealing with as well.
Yes, they are. Yes. I mean, people like Transport for London, we're in advanced talks with like Welsh Water, Northern Ireland Electricity, Grosvenor Estates, and we're trying to onboard with all of these. And, for me as well, part of that barrier to entry is also a lack of understanding on my part of how long some of these procurements would also take. And if you didn't have those expressions of interest, we couldn't make sure that we've got the team in place to survive for a 6 or 9 month procurement process. The onboarding for technical onboarding is really extensive in this industry. And we had only really allowed 3 to 6 months, not sort of 9 to 12 months in terms of that onboarding. And there are a number of things that we're doing to shorten that back to our expectations, and we will do in the future, but that certainly wasn't now. But having those expressions of interest from those partners meant that there's been trust from the investors that actually this will happen, and so they feel comfortable in parting with their money.
I mean, we live and learn, don't we, as we roll
Yes.
on it's out. And often everything does take twice as long and does cost twice as much as you think.
Absolutely.
You've got to, with that kind of business that you're in, that B2B business with long sales cycles, with, significant funding to do all of your development, you've got to find those investors who understand that trajectory and are prepared to fund that and wait for that big return on investment later. So let's talk about those investors. So you've come from a background in Microsoft where I'm kind of imagining you probably hadn't had many interactions with the venture capital market before.
No.
So how did you go about it? When you sat there and thought, right, I'm going to have to go out and raise investment, where did you start? How did you find those angel investors and those high net worths and those family offices?
So actually, when we first founded, when I was at Microsoft, my old manager actually became our chairman, and he's very well connected in the space, and he helped facilitate introductions through his network and through his group. And so him and I would go out and we would meet all of these organizations, but I was very much in control of presenting the business and presenting the organization. And his name's Jeff Sutton. I've worked with him now on and off for over 15 years. And he was a real champion that really helped push and really helped elevate us within that space, and showed me how to go about doing a pitch deck, how to go about standing in front of an investor, and what kind of things they were looking for, because it wasn't a sales presentation. And actually that's been quite a learning, is if you're in investment mode, it's quite hard to switch back into sales pitch mode, and vice versa. They have slightly different ways of presenting, and that's also been one of the challenges. Early doors, I was very much more on a strategic partnership or a sales-based presentation, and it just doesn't work. You really had to sort of make sure that you were focusing in on the investor side. So he gave me lots of feedback and coaching as well. Then from there, I gradually just got introductions from various people and friends of friends, and in the networks, and then met people like yourself. And we've been out and sort of met further family offices, further high net worth individuals and offices. We've tried a few VCs, but we'd be ready for them in the next round. And that's certainly an institutional investor or a venture capitalist would be our next port of call. But at the moment, we wanted a lot more of the family offices, particularly that were in our space, that could help with the facilitation of that growth to the next round, because they could facilitate a lot of the sales introductions as well. And so we've really tried to sort of do targeted promotions of who we are in that space. And actually that's brought a couple of investors or introducer investor companies into us, and they've helped with the round. And it was through one of those that helped me with most of this last round.
At this point in the podcast, I just want to take a quick moment to talk with you directly about something that I think is really going to help you if you're thinking about raising investment. One of the favourite parts of what I do is talking with the amazing female founders on this podcast, hearing their success stories that honestly inspires me to do what I do. Now, the unfortunate truth is that when it comes to raising investment to grow and scale our businesses, the success stories of women are far and few between when compared to male founders. Call it what you want, but we are calling it out. My brand new book, Raise, The Female Founder's Guide to Securing Investment, applies the thousands of female founders' experiences that I've worked alongside, combined with the 5 key steps to raising investment that I teach our clients at Enter the Arena. And it's specifically tailored to the female founder experience. The reason I wrote this book is to help level the playing field for you, providing you with all the vital information you need to know before, during, and even after securing an investor. So my fellow female founders, it is time to armour yourself, get clued up and get your business taking flight. You can get the book on Amazon, just type in Raise, the Female Founder's Guide to Securing Investment, and you'll be able to find it there. Right, back to the podcast. So that network, I mean, that's been everything to you, hasn't it? That kind of, and through your, obviously stellar career, working in corporates, the people you know, and just building out from that. I mean, what in terms of that networking, what are the kind of tips you would give to other founders on that journey about how to best build your network?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think it's really making sure that you're targeting people that really understand your business, and then making yourself available at the events that they're going to be at and the places that they are online, and getting yourself as a presence there, and really getting in there. If you do happen to know somebody in that space or get introduced, it makes it so much easier. I've been really fortunate to get a lot of the investors post those very early days ones have all come through referrals from one person to another person to another person. And we've had to pay referral commissions as part of the investment, portfolio. But that's great because, that makes them keener to help introduce you to more people as well. And that's how we've done most of our investment round, particularly this last one, which was pretty substantial. And we've had a couple of really champion investors in this last round.
And you had some money from the government future fund scheme, didn't you, as well?
Yeah. So when we had just won the Innovate grant for the TfL project, which was going to fund 2/3 of the money to get this going with TfL, and we had to find the rest of the money and have in the bank before they would award the business fully. So we were just going back out to our current existing investors and asking them to put in an amount of money. And then as part of this, COVID hit literally right then. So we topped up to make sure that we knew that we could survive all the way through the COVID period, just in case anything happened. And we applied for the future fund, so they fund matched. So we had a convertible loan note. And then as part of this round now, we then triggered the conversion of that note. And so it's moved in. They are a very complex investor to have on the cap table. We've had to redo all of our articles of association, redo our shareholder agreement. And with the many, many friends and family that we have sort of in my cap table, that's almost 100 signatures that we've had to go and get re-signed.
Wow. Okay. It's complicated.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm always blown away by with you, Linda, is your ability to spin about 10 different funding plates at any one time. And I know that on your journey, you've had grant funding, you've had equity funding, obviously the future fund, you've also, taken on debt. How do you manage all of that? What's the process that you go through to kind of look at your cash flow and look at all these funding options and somehow make it all work? Because you always seem to make it work.
I don't sleep. It's sort of my midnight insomnia, and I do suffer midnight insomnia. I think particularly worse when there is lots of funding crisis going on. You're always laying there, where is this going to come from? Where am I going to pull it out this time? So yes, we have done payroll on our credit card, on my credit cards. We've looked at loans. We've looked at what deals we can do with partners that are already in the network. For example, what value adds can we do to make something happen a little bit quicker, or making something happen here. And if that happens, then this might happen. And so we're trying to push those things through. We've been quite fortunate. I mean, my co-founder has been very good at helping with that side of things as well, and having somebody to talk to about all of these and bounce ideas off is definitely helpful. But yeah, we've done everything from, as I said, credit card payments to bank loans to the future fund to grants to, anything that can keep the lights on. As long as you know that it's worth it, you've got something like these letters of interest, it's got an end in sight. Sometimes it's more challenging when you kind of going, am I actually on the right track? And there has been a couple of occasions in the past where we've had to pivot, and we've had to sort of slightly change the direction that we were in for various reasons. And it's like, oh, I don't quite know which direction. I don't quite know where my Northern Star is now, because it's gone from where it was. and we change the company slightly and go, okay, there it is, and we'll go. And that's easier to do at all the funding when you know where you're going. It is definitely easier, and it's easier to raise as well.
Very destabilizing, isn't it, when you lose that North Star, even if it's just for like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
What the hell am I doing? But all of that is stressful, isn't it? Especially, I mean, you're talking about big sums of money, you know, with a team of people working on big projects. How do you handle that stress of balancing all of that?
Probably sometimes my family would say not very well. Other times, fine. I try not to let it get to me. When you can't make payroll and it is literally tomorrow and you're still trying to find the final pieces of payroll, it is stressful. And I don't overly handle that particularly well because I just go into myself and I'm just completely focused on that at the time. But, you know, generally I try and make sure I sleep. I eat, you know, as a whole, we eat really, really well. I try to eat cleanly, try to eat healthily. I have been known to drink too much because I don't know what to do. And I try and walk. I walk every morning. I walk the dog and I try and get that half an hour to an hour of, okay, trying to get away from the desk, trying to get away from everything before I have to sit there and go and just get some clarity and get some thought space.
Yeah.
So, you know,
isn't it? So important.
Yeah, I'm not exactly a yoga person, never have been. I'd much rather go in the boxing, you know, boxercise or on a bike or something. I can't run these days, so I walk a lot and I walk fast, and that really does help clear my head.
Yeah, the boxercise is a good one, isn't it? You can punch out like whoever it is that's driving the train that day, whatever investor conversations are becoming tricky.
Yep.
I mean, you know, you come from, I would say, quite a sort of, I imagine, quite a male background in Microsoft, big corporate, kind of making deals, that kind of stuff. And often when I speak to female founders that have come from that kind of environment, they tend to experience less gender bias when they are in the world of investment. Would you say that rings true for you too? You know, as you've been out there talking to all these investors, have you ever felt treated differently because you were a female entrepreneur?
Overall, no. I really haven't. And I have sort of two sides on this one, and one could be a little bit controversial. So I do think that sometimes I observe that people say that they feel that they've been mistreated or been, you know, that the meeting didn't go particularly well because they were female. Yet when I've spoken to them in more depth, I found out that it's just normal business questions, that maybe they weren't prepared, or just maybe they just weren't expecting those types of questions in that type of environment. And I'm often quite shocked that they feel it's because they were female they were asked them, rather than actually, no, it's a standard general business question. So that is not across the board. And I know that there has to be, you know, that sometimes it is inappropriate questions to some people. And absolutely, I've also sort of heard that. But I do think sometimes there is a misexpectation on what you're going to be asked in an investor pitch and how tough some of those pitches can be. And I've had much tougher questions sometimes from females in the VC room or in the investment room than I have from males. And out of my cap table, actually, I've got a vast majority of my cap table is male. I've got very few female investors within that space, and that could be obviously because there aren't as many female investors generally. But, you know, they are my big champions. They're helping me secure business. They champion me and they've been behind me. You know, I've got one person in particular, his name's David Svensson, and he was one of the early founders of Microsoft, and I met him through an introduction. And he's been one of my biggest champions all the way through, and him and his network, and he's helped push this through all the way. But yeah, I mean, I had the only experience I think there's one moment where I was in a room full of family offices doing a speech on what it's like to get invested in, what it's like to be in one of those rooms. And I was the only female, and the gentleman came into the room and we were all stood in the doorway and we were all talking before we sat down, and they'd said hello to every single other person and then walked by, and they just assumed, I think, that I might have been the waitress or the help or something, and they just blanked me. And that was an obvious, and that's because I'm female. And you could just see everybody else that I've been talking to just completely jaws drop. They had never experienced that kind of blatant disregard for somebody that was female in an environment like that, because they weren't expecting a female to be there.
That's really interesting.
But yeah, that would be the only real time. I think, you know, as I said, overall, my investor base has been, well, they are predominantly male, and they've been massive champions for me.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And there are so many incredible investors out there, you know, male and female. And you're so right, Linda, we mustn't go into it with these biases of our own, assuming that we are going to be treated in a different way because we're a female founder. And also, you're right, you know, we do have to toughen up. And that's not about saying you have to act like a man. It's just that we have to be prepared for this stuff. You know, it is, you know, investors don't back founders lightly. They want to absolutely be convinced that this is the right opportunity. So we have to get used to those tough questions and be able to answer them.
Definitely. And, you know, they're no different than when we were at Microsoft. And actually, just even being in any of the roles, I consulted in a number of businesses between, you know, Microsoft and setting up this service. And, you know, just going into any of those businesses and even pitching yourself and the questions they ask about your capabilities and things. It's not about me or being female. It's about, actually, are you going to be able to fulfill the needs that I've got and solve the problem that I've got right now at my table? Don't get me wrong, there are definitely, and I have heard definite versions that are very different from that story, and are completely inappropriate, but I've not experienced those in my whole race.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that. So all through this, I mean, what, you know, for you, like, how important is it that you have really good support around you as you're going through all of these experiences in building your startup?
I actually don't think you can underestimate it. It is really, really important. You know, being part of the Arena Group has just been invaluable. I've called it like the board I can't afford. You know, it's different because it's not about my company. You can be completely open there. You can talk about anything, and everybody's just there just to be able to listen, or there is advice if you want it, and just to be able to do that self-training as well, because there are things that I've learned within that group and within the training sessions that I didn't know and I didn't need. And there's things like, all of a sudden, you know, how to set your business up for an exit that might not be in 3, 5 or 7 years time, but you need to do it now. Or how do I manage my, you know, emotional intelligence to make sure that my team are coming through and really in a good place for when I do exit, and that if there is an earnout, that they can come and stay with me. And, you know, just actually getting insights on how am I handling stuff. But yeah, the main thing is just, sometimes you don't even need to say anything, but they're all experiencing the same problems, and you go, thank God, I'm not the only one.
Exactly. We're all going through it. But I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think often as entrepreneurial leaders, and I do think this is a particular issue often for female leaders, is that we tend to put everybody else first. But if we don't look after ourselves as entrepreneurial leaders and develop our skills to the highest level, it's going to be hard for us to achieve real success, I think. So my belief is absolutely we have to ring fence that space for ourselves to develop, you know. And I think if you've ever been in a corporate environment, which you have and I have as well, you know, we always had a huge budget to spend on your personal development, on your business development for you as an individual. But when we're running a startup, we forget to put that budget back into our business. It's so important.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And do you know what, as well, so many times I look at my diary and I go, I just can't fit that in. I just can't. But you make yourself, because, well, you know, you're making a commitment to the group, and then you get them and you go, oh, I'm so glad I did. And also it has saved me on with a number of the topics that we've learned over the last couple of years. You know, we've been almost 3 years. It's amazing how many things that I've just suddenly realized that I haven't put in place, or what I've not achieved, or what I've not done. And I just wish, oh God, I wish I'd done that sooner. You know, it could have saved me the first year of my startup.
Yeah, well, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We can't do everything. We can't do everything at the start. You know, we have to do it as time unfolds. But yeah, and it's a pleasure having you as part of that group, Linda, of course. So yeah, so I mean, what amazing achievements you've had, and I'm sure lots of exciting things for you in the future. What do you know, from what you've learned, particularly on the fundraising piece over the last 7 years now with your business, what would be the kind of couple of nuggets of advice you would give to others about how to go about your raise in the right way?
I think the key one is finding the right investors. Not every investor that you meet is actually the right one. And actually having the right investor has been fundamental to a lot of things for my business, particularly over this year where we've brought on some investors during this round. They have helped introduce us to the right people in the industry. They've helped facilitate introductions into new business for new sales. So it's incrementally looking at increasing our growth potential. There's insights then into the products, and they're able to understand the pitch in a way that people from outside the industry necessarily wouldn't be able to. So from that perspective, the right investors and targeting the people that have got the right background or are interested in your space is key. I have done a lot of pitches where it looks like on paper I might want to be in that space, or, I think I do. And then when I look at it in hindsight, I was like, actually, there was a reason they didn't invest in me, because we're not a fit. So I think that's a really important one. And knowing your stuff. Like one of the big bits of feedback that I get now is, I've done so many pitches that I don't need to prepare almost for them, because I know my numbers. I know my business, I know my competitor market, I know what's out there. I don't know all the competitors, but I've got a really good understanding of my space, and I can answer pretty much any question that they throw at you. And it shows that you're prepared, and that gives that level of trust in you as a person, that actually you're not just bluffing this, and actually you do know what you're talking about. So I think the right investor, and just really, really just understanding and knowing your own business.
Yeah. So critical, and that's what gives you that confidence that protects your mindset as you go through this. You've got a great business, you've got a great opportunity out there, and when you hold that in your heart, it gets you through all the shit.
Exactly. And make them feel like they're missing out if they don't. It's that, you all look fine on paper and things, and it's very functional, but take your personality through and really make them want your business. Make them feel like if they don't invest, they're going to miss out on something of a lifetime.
That's right. You've got the power. You have the power. Amazing. Thank you so much, Linda. It's been really great hearing more about Spinview and being able to share your story with all of our listeners. Really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Wish you all the best for the year ahead.
Thank you. And you.
All right. Speak soon.
Bye.
Thanks for following Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. This content is all provided to you for free, so if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss another one. Enter the Arena has helped hundreds of female founders fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business. Our first-hand experience, expert guidance, and proven programs help female founders unleash the Wonder Woman inside. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.enterthearena.co.uk. I'm Julia Elliott Brown, and I look forward to talking with you soon.